The identity attributes that we're looking at are often ignored, right? Meaning they're everywhere. Everybody's logging into a whole bunch of different things, and these attributes are everywhere. Curating them and doing something with them actually can help make a difference, and that's kind of why we existed in the first place. Imagine a scenario where you start a new job, you show up for work on day one, right? And when you get there, you go to the front desk, and the security guard happens to be there, and you have to prove who you are. You have to show some, ID. They look you over, they make sure you don't look sketchy. They issue you your new badge, they let you in the building, and you're good to go, right? You do this for months and months and months at a time. You show up every day, the security guard gets to know you. They know what is normal for you when you come in, when you don't come in, how you're supposed to look, all the above, right? Um, After 6 or 7 months, you show up one day wearing a big trench coat and a big backpack that looks scary, and you're really sweaty and you look really concerned, right? Well, you're still you, right? So technically, if I was an IAM platform, you're still you. I'm probably going to let you in, right? But as a human, that security guard looks at you and says, hey, there's probably something really wrong here. I should stop and ask this person more questions, right? As humans, we're good at that. As machines, they're really bad at that. And that's kind of what we're trying to help address, is helping with that whole unusual activity aspect of things, right? And for us, it starts with threats, right? So as you can see here on the screen, we collect these identity events that Travis talked about from identity providers. And there are things like, Mark successfully signed in, Mark failed his sign in, Mark MFA'd, Mark failed his MFA, right? Those types of events. And we use them in aggregate for an entire tenant to determine, what's normal for, this application. But we also use it to figure out things like what's normal or unusual for this individual user. It all kind of manifests itself into these threats. So, what are the threats? They're typical identity threats that you might see. So for example, right here we have a credential stuffing attack that has occurred. I'll go ahead and click on see more, and it's going to break down the attack for me, right? And it's going to tell me, where the IP addresses come from, how many accounts did they try, how many did actually existed in my platform that they failed to take over, and how many takeovers were there, right? We find that when you're doing an investigation for an account attack or account compromise, context is everything. Just because somebody committed impossible travel doesn't necessarily mean that they are a bad actor. Maybe they jumped onto a VPN. Maybe they changed providers, or they're on Apple Relay now or something. So context matters. And so we use our tooling to provide as much context as possible, not only around individual users, but also around the attacks themselves, right? So you can see here's somebody who was successfully taken over, this user here. You can see the event signaling that was, a part of their account. So, for example, on this one, it's interesting that this user was a dormant account. It means that it was an account that hadn't been used in greater than 90 days that suddenly woke up, and they did it from a new device, right? So we want to provide as much context as possible so you can decide what to do there, right? At the same time, we also want to provide trends. So since we're seeing all these events, it makes it possible for us to run these through algorithms to come back and say, what trends happen in this particular application or tenant or workspace, right? So you can see for this one, there's some device discrepancies. There's a bunch of dormant accounts. I've got some concerns about that. I've got quite a bit of impossible travel. We even provide things like, people generally don't interact with the IAM platform between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. Central, right? Since we can monitor all this behavior, we can also find unusual activity. So if I come over here to unusual activity, you'll see that, hey, there was a significant increase in activity at 5 a.m. Central Standard Time on the 12th, right? So maybe I should go look into that. a handful of users that got labeled as having their accounts taken over. I should really go look at those, right? So it's kind of down that whole see something, say something path, right? We're detecting things and we're telling you about those things. You can see it here. You can even notify people when these threats occur. You could send data to a SIM platform like a Datadog or a Splunk or something else, right? When these threats occur. So since I'm gonna kind of investigate here, let's say I assume something's been taken over, or we notify about a risk, what can I do with that? I can come over to our account section and I can go look for a specific user that we've seen. We'll tell you everything we know about that user, all the labeling we've ever given them, their general circadian rhythm, whether or not something's typical or an outlier activity based on everybody else in the tenant, all of their events, their location history, whether or not we've evaluated any rules or workflows against them to orchestrate their journey. And then what does their signal print look like? I'll get into that in one moment. And then also, what sessions does this user have? One thing that we actually find that it's actually, bad guys aren't breaking in, they're logging in, right? And, at least scammers are. And oftentimes they're logging in with tokens, not with someone's password. So they might go steal cookies and tokens, and they might steal an OAuth, refresh token somehow, right? When they do that, they've got the session token already. So the IAM platforms just let them in because, well, that's Mark, right? He can come on in. He's already got a session. So because of that, we implemented session detection or session hijacking detection, right? So here you've got somebody that has committed multiple instances of impossible travel, and they've had multiple device changes all across the same session. So if I do see more on this one, you'll see that 47 IP addresses across 8 devices in 11 countries have all used the same session, right? This is very highly likely a hijacked session, right? And we'll go ahead and label it as session sharing, and we would have notified the SIM platform or your SOC or whatever that this occurred. Pretty common scenario, believe it or not. Doesn't happen as much in the workforce, but it definitely happens in the consumer world, and it's super common for things like promotion abuse. If I'm McDonald's or something, and I want to get more free hamburgers, I'll, give my session tokens out from the application, and then people will game that system, right? It actually happens all the time. So we can detect that type of thing. The other thing that I wanted to discuss is our Explorer. So again, remember I said context is everything. Well, Travis mentioned that what's the first thing you do when you suspect somebody's account's been taken over? You probably reset their password, right? Maybe you disable their account. But maybe the third thing you do is, great, now I got to go figure out how was it compromised, right? Where did they get access? Why did this person get access? What does it really look like? And that's where our Explorer comes into play. Since we're seeing all these events for these users, we can come out and break them out for specific use cases. So if I wanted to go look at this particular user, I could create a filter and say, look, over the last 30 days, tell me everything there is to know about all the account information for this user. And here they are. What application did they SSO to? What did their device history look like and their location history look like? And then more importantly, how risky and how anomalous were each one of the events for this user? So you can see that this login here wasn't very risky. It was just a 17 out of 100. And it wasn't that anomalous, but this event, this token issued event, wasn't really that risky, but pretty anomalous for this particular user. So I can sort by these anomaly events, for example, and have it show me the most anomalous events. So I can get a history of what this person's done, basically, and what our opinion is on whether or not this was anomalous or not. I can click on these. I can, get more information about the user and all of their signaling, all of that type of thing. We can also, at the end of the day, mix and match everything out here. So You can see we've seen 13 million events on this tenant. Who are the most active accounts? How many sessions do they have? What are their IP addresses? Who are the most active IP addresses? What are the most active sessions? How many are there, and who has the most IP addresses associated with them? Prints and emails. Prints are devices. So again, this is just all about context, is establishing context. At the end of the day, establish context and then detect threats using that context, and then come back to do investigations. Which leads me finally to, if I go back to this user that I was looking at earlier, I mentioned signal print down here. I'm not going to spend much time on it, but it's important to note that if you're looking at identities, it's also important to note how identities are related to other identities within your tenant, right? And what you can discover with this are things like fraud rings, or oftentimes you can discover how, maybe somebody has multiple accounts. So in the case of this particular user here, you can see that we've labeled them as someone who shared their account. That's kind of the classic Netflix problem, right? Where I gave my account to Travis, he goes off and streams a bunch of stuff. We've labeled them that way because we believe they've shared their account with this account here. Well, how do we know that? If I double click on this, you'll see that they've shared all these IP addresses, but we're also doing a bunch of math behind the scenes to figure that out. I'm showing you this because, again, context matters, and we've been able to, using this technique and the identity graphing technique, we've been able to do things like discover international fraud rings that were defrauding, one of our customers' platforms for millions. They'd built an entire business around defrauding their platform, and it was happening out of Eastern Europe. And we were able to find the users because they all had shared signaling of some sort. They all had shared behavior. And we were able to ultimately label them. Our platform, this is what we do. Like when we're getting these events, we're building out these real-time identity graphs over time, and these are ever changing. So these are all IPs, these are all devices, these are all email addresses. So what a user's signaling looks like manifests itself here. And then lastly, very lastly, so if you see something, say something, right? But you should also do something. So what can you do? And in Travis's point earlier, we'll notify SOC platforms, we'll notify whoever. We'll even go as far as, if depending on your IAM system at the moment, we'll even go as far as letting you revoke someone's sessions from our platform, right? So actually take action here, suspend their account. In this case, it's Okta. So I can revoke all this person's Okta sessions if I suspect something's goofy, or I can even suspend their account from here, just in general, right? I can do that for anything I'm connected to. But the other thing we can do is these real-time journey orchestration, right? So we like to think of it as pre-authentication. So as I'm authenticating, if something looks off, what should I do next? So if something looks off, you can build yourself, and you can say, this is the signaling I care about. And if, like for example, if this user's been labeled with account sharing and this one's been labeled as an outlier, what should I do? Well, we can tell your IAM platform, challenge the user for more MFA, or send the user off for identity proofing, or deny them access, whatever you'd like to do here. But the idea is this is how you interact with our platform in a real-time fashion to affect their journey. Hopefully you understand that identity events are first-class events, and they shouldn't just be, we shouldn't just be issuing a user a token and wiping our hands of it, right? That's not okay. We should be issuing a user a token, but then paying attention to what they're doing, and then ultimately making changes as they go by.